Watch this video with our virtual reality glasses for smartphone. virtualvisor.com.
What we're going to talk about this morning is actually, it's a nice title, Ground Control to Major Tom, and that's probably the only thing which relates to the music industry here. We talk about traditional TV versus VR, and we try to tackle the question, is VR really the future of film and television, or maybe it's the end of everything? Well, we don't know yet. And I don't think we will come to a final conclusion here, but let's see, maybe just for a little bit of housekeeping. If there's a question from the audience, please shout and wave, because you will need a microphone. Because otherwise Michel, who's sitting here in his lovely office on an island somewhere in Kenya, will not understand a word you're talking about. Just a quick intro to me. I'm your moderator for the next 56 minutes or something like that. We have to be really punctual because Michel has to leave for another island and he has to wait for the high tide. And the other reason is there's some interested people who might take the stage later on. Quick intro to me. I'm the moderator. My name is Hubert Gertis. I spent like the last couple of decades in mostly digital media. Currently I'm the interim head of digital at a small TV channel based in Munich, which is called C1, and doing Bollywood for Germany, synchronized Bollywood content for the German audience. You can already see with the title like head of digital that in the TV industry some things are moving a little bit slower, because obviously everything you do on television is digital now. But still, the digital part in television relates to everything which is non-linear in the transmission. But let's start talking a little bit about TV first. I start because I'm doing a keynote here, so it's probably about 15 minutes of a short intro, and then we move into a hopefully interesting discussion. Okay, let's talk about TV. I mean, everybody in the audience probably knows TV, if he's not coming from a very remote island somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Who of you guys owns a TV set? Not so many people anymore. Interesting audience. The funny thing about television is if you ask people, do you watch television? Usually they don't. If you look at statistics, it's kind of baffling because people are watching television, obviously. And even if you look at the audience where you say, yeah, well, like teenagers, they don't watch television anymore. Yes, they definitely watch less television than, let's say, people in the 65 to 75 age bracket. But even in Germany, which is not like the heavy TV land like in the US, the average TV consumption of a teenager is about 120 minutes per day. This is scary, and we're coming a little bit later to that, where this is coming from. Another question is, where is it coming from that everybody who's coming up with a new kind of technical media is looking for a TV and says, yeah, that's where we want to go. But one thing is, of course, the time spent in front of a television set, and the second part is money. Because if you look for an 800-pound gorilla, and maybe it's more like an 800-ton gorilla in the media universe, it's television. Because the money which is flowing into television is just mind-boggling. So if you look at something like, yes, Facebook is buying Oculus for $2 billion, it's like, yeah, okay. That's probably, let's say, a third about the money which we are pumping into a public broadcasting system just here in Germany. So the size of television on a global scale is just mind-boggling. And in a certain way, that's why it's like the king you want to dethrone, because if you can get like just 10% of the money floating into the TV universe, it's great. What's the thing about television? maybe let's take a step back, because usually it's like you talk about television, yes, people are watching television, and like about 2 years ago I was working with an OTT company, which is actually bundling television channels for internet consumption. And one of the questions the guys came up to me was like, yeah, well, in the German market now, what should our pricing strategy be? And I was like, I don't know, because it's a kind of new product you're offering in a universe where everybody essentially has already TV. So what I did was actually starting a tiny little research based upon, maybe somebody knows it, there's a really interesting method coming out of Harvard Business School. It's called Jobs to be Done, coming from Clayton Christensen, the guy famous for his book, The Innovator's Dilemma. And Jobs to be Done is a method which says that people are not buying services and products. They essentially hire a product because they have a job which needs to be done. And his most famous example is actually one of the first things they applied it to. It's the milkshake example, where essentially it was a big chain of fast food chain, and they tried to increase their margins. And they tried everything, It's like, let's put more hamburgers on the menu in the morning. Didn't work, Let's try ham and eggs. Didn't work. And so they tried lots of things, and finally went to Chris and Harvard Business School and said, hey guys, do you maybe have an idea? And what they did, they applied this method. And the method works like that. What you do is like, you have a couple of 10, 20, 30 interviews with people, with actual consumers or buyers and users of your service or buyers of your product. And it's a structured interview, which takes about an hour, and you go back in a timeline from the time where they start buying the service to finally when did they first hear about it and what's going on. And that's the thing we did back then with television and with the uses of the OTT service. And one of the outcomes was fairly interesting, because television is always the same. It's a broadcasting medium. The TV set doesn't know who you are or what you're doing there. Mostly it doesn't even know what you're watching. But from the user's perspective, from the viewer's perspective, it really depends on what kind of job needs to be done for you at a certain moment in time you turn on your television set. And what we found back then is like there are two totally distinct groups of television viewers. And one is like the viewer we all dream about. It's the guy who sits in front of the television and is watching television. As it seems, or as it happens, those people are a minority. Most people don't watch television like that. Most people turn on their TV set and just keep it running like radio. It's like, just imagine, one typical example is somebody sitting in his home office, and sitting in a home office can be like kind of boring because there's nobody to talk to, and even if you go to like the kitchen, there's nobody there except your coffee maker. You don't talk to your coffee maker, you go back to your desk, sitting in front of your computer. One of the means to escape that is turning on the television. And the television just sits in a corner and it's running and blaring and shouting like, hey, 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 there's some great content coming up, and hey, 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 this commercial. And usually you don't look. It's like a window, it's like a window with some things changing constantly. And that's like the typical TV viewer. The other TV viewers are the people who are now subscribing to services like Netflix or Maxdome in Germany, or use VOD or catch-up services, because they really want to watch something, at this very moment in time. And Netflix, the inventors of the binge watching, and somewhat like the patron saints of the binge watch festival, in a certain kind of way. If you look at them, they're a mightily successful company. But if you listen to Reed Hawkins, he's like, yeah, sure we're successful and sure we're global, but look at our revenues and look at our spending. It's like the money we spend on content, it's a pipsqueak compared to this traditional TV universe where it's just like running like water and nobody's like really watching, if not something is happening which just makes it totally interesting for you at this very moment in time. Those people who are really, really watching like this, taking this kind of radio approach, one thing we found out, those are the people who actually hate services like Netflix. Because one of those guys said, you know, I'm coming from work, I just want to turn on my TV set, and I don't want to start working again and looking for something I want to watch. So it's a completely different approach, and we just put it together in one basket and said, oh, it's television. How does this relate to virtual reality? Well, if you look at television as this immense, it's a weapon of mass distraction, you know. So it's always happening, it's always on, but you're never ever really concentrated on what's happening on the screen. If you look at VR, it's the complete opposite. VR is total immersion. It's nothing where you just put it on, I just put on my head-mounted device and see what's happening, you know, because I'm just bored. It's a decision, and it's a decision which takes lots of effort, which takes lots of investment first, and then lots of effort. Does this mean there is no real path between the one and the other? Well, of course not, because one part is that if you listen to creators of television, usually they subscribe more to the position that people should watch their content and not just keep it running and not looking at or not listening to. And the other part is the power of television is like, Michel is just sitting here on this big screen. You cannot see that, Michel, but we see you like big and live coming from somewhere. And if people are kind of bored looking at me talking here, they see a big screen and something's happening there. And you see like, oh, that's a beautiful environment. And okay, you just dream, maybe I should go on a vacation as well. And that's like television usually works. This kind of distraction in a social environment where you just hop on, hop off, that's the opposite of VR, of course, as it is right now. But I had a really funny, short Twitter discussion with Jules Orbach of Otoy one time, because he was like saying, yeah, in the future, we don't need any screens anymore. Because if you have something like the Magic Leap glasses or some contact lenses which beam content directly into your eye, you don't need a screen like that. It's more like a virtual screen. You say, I need a screen here, and it's like, there's a screen, and then you turn on some program, and you can start watching television or not watching television. You can start using content in a virtual environment like you do right now, but you just don't have a screen anymore. When this is going to happen, that's of course a very good question, because if we look at it right now, we're kind of far away from that. But it's moving into a direction like this. And what we're trying to do in the next 45 minutes, it's see a little bit, how could this path look like, or how could this movement, this kind of coming together or growing apart, how could this happen? And to get this done, we have a nice round of panelists here, and we start with a short introduction of everybody. And I guess as everybody is already watching, mostly Michel on his beautiful island, I guess we start with Michel, who is actually the former head of acquisitions, of film acquisitions at Active France, which means, yes, he made lots of really, really important decisions. And he's currently not just sitting there in Kenya and having his glasses on, having a good time listening to us. He's actually an independent interactive story architect and doing many, many fascinating things in the VR world. But maybe give a quick word to us, a hello to the audience, Michel.
Hi, hello everyone. You want me to say a couple words?
Sure thing, of course.
Well, as you said, I come from the world of traditional cinema, the world that we call platties in the VR world, and I'm bridging over to VR. I want to say one thing based on everything you explained, that as the main challenge that television has to fix is a change of paradigm. As long as television will be prisoner of a flat 2D screen, it will be very difficult for it to integrate any kind of VR experience within it. And one of the main problems that it faces is that television confuses 360-degree video that you experience on a flat screen with VR. VR is video, so that until television accepts to see how it can embrace different platform that will be used and consider itself as an editor and a curator of content and not a prisoner of the flat screen, television is going to lose that battle to VR.
That's a very good way to move to Carl to my left, because he is actually, he's coming from the traditional TV world, or the traditional movie world, as far as I understand, doing special effects for things you might have watched on some really, really big screens, like The Dark Knight, as far as I remember, and things like that. Okay, sorry. And he moved into VR a couple of years ago.
Yeah, about 3.5 years ago.
Maybe you can give us a short idea. One of the things, if we look at television, is of course one part is television is many things. So one of the things Michel was just mentioning is like television is curating. So if you look at a TV channel, it's actually a curated playlist of 2D content. And another part of television is, of course, it has to be produced somehow. And there's like the first like really deep possible interconnection between the world of television and the world of VR. Because if you look at VR, there are like two different strands of developers coming up. One part is people coming in from the gaming industry, and you can see it, and most experience they build because they always look a little bit gamey because that's the way they work. And the other people are coming in from special effects like you. Maybe you can give us a short idea on what's changing there for you and how you approach things.
Well, I say what I am first. I'm a futurist and a creative technologist, so I work with technology, whatever it is, and to work with whatever the best solution is for the problem, and to constantly work with new technologies that comes in and work with it creatively and do something new with it. Sorry, what was the question? It was...
It's how you see it from your experience,
Yeah.
this kind of switch from doing special effects for movies, which are finally ending up in a fully rendered out scene, which is not to be changed, and the interactive environment you can build with the same kind of tools.
Oh, like something that's temporally based.
Yeah.
And something, well, I mean, you can still do temporal based media within virtual reality. That's what's going on with the 360 video, which is kind of virtual reality 0.5, really, isn't it? It's not really like true virtual reality, but it's still temporally based media, and soon the temporal based media inside virtual reality is going to be interactive in the point that it's going to be spatially aware. So with light filled cameras, you'll be able to move your head around within like a 2 by 2 meter square space. You can already do that with pre-rendered CG video inside virtual reality, and that's completely temporally based media still, just like TV. But you get to choose where you look. Yeah, but one of the things with TV, though, I would say, is that it's how your brain is on TV is very different to how your brain is when you're inside virtual reality. When you're watching TV, you've got a lot of alpha brainwaves, and so you're in a state of suggestibility and kind of hypnosis in a way. You are in a relaxed state, and you are kind of just chilling, right? You're just watching. Virtual reality is about recreating reality, so you get all the brainwaves, unless you're in a relaxed place inside virtual reality, and so that's when it becomes more of a relaxing space. So that's how they're both very different kind of things, because you can have a lot of action happening on TV, but it's still you're still in a relaxed state. But if there's a lot of action inside virtual reality, you're not in a relaxed state.
Let's maybe hop to Martin Bauman first, because as we just started talking about the effects of television, so what kind of, you're triggering alpha waves, or what's your main business?
Yeah, first of all, I'm Martin Bauman. I'm in the business. Tomorrow, 30 years, making television. Am I proud? I don't know. I mean, it changed a lot over the 30 years I'm working in the industry, and to have such things in the last years like social media, which is something where the audience is more and more focusing whilst watching or not watching television, makes our work a bit more difficult, paired with the pressure on budgets, just to pick that up what you just said about the high volume of budgets for production. This is a high volume that, of turnover within the networks, but at the end of the day, the producers are under a lot of pressure when it comes to producing high quality content for TV. and therefore more and more of our thoughts are, in a different direction as to where can we generate more income to invest in new models. Like I was sitting yesterday with some guys from Pro7 Media, and it was a more production-related meeting, but we ended up talking about VR and how can they integrate VR in their business model at first. And Pro7 is kind of, very looking forward and going forward in different directions, like, their traditional business. And how can they kind of monetize their and a possible investment in virtual reality by not losing their focus on traditional television. And we've been thinking about, why not, they have that advertisings in between shows, where we all stand up and, get another beer or do other stuff, looking on Facebook and, Twitter. And we thought, why not pushing additional content in a VR environment and just give a different experience of what you just saw. Maybe a special scene out of a TV series where you can have the experience in a 360 environment, and then push into that environment, push your ad into it, your advertising, and just give the people a different experience and then place advertising there, which is, of course, kind of manipulative, but it's the nature of advertising, I guess, and we have to live with it in the future. But this is something where they have to think about, because you've been talking about high budgets and everything in television, but there is money, but the aim of every big kind of company like the RTL Group or ITV in the UK is to make money. And it's not to give people a different experience like they have already over the last 30 years, because it's not their actual business model. So what I think is, you guys are searching for the new kind of how can we deal with television in the future and with VR combined. So the aim is more give the big companies an idea of how they can monetize, and they will go for it.
Yeah, television is actually in the business of enticing people to invite somebody into his home, and have them sitting there for 1, 2, 3 hours and doing something in your living room. So it's something which is getting already fairly close, but in virtual reality, all those people, all those things, or the contents you're dealing with, they're actually even closing. But let's finalize our round of introduction with Stephan Steglich, who's the director of the business unit Future Applications and Media at Fraunhofer, which has the most fascinating acronym for a department. It's called FAME, and well, that's why we're here anyway.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Stephan Steglich, Fraunhofer. As you know, most of you, I hope, Fraunhofer is an applied research institute of applied research, and we are looking into the TV domain for quite some time, developing standards and technologies for that. And of course also virtual reality or 360 streaming has been a quite important topic for quite some time. And we are looking specifically how this can influence the television. I mean, we see VR on glasses, on mobile devices, but we have not seen it yet on television. If we have time later at the VR launch at 12 o'clock, we're gonna do a show and show the solution how to experience 360 video streaming on a television set, so you can get some first ideas how this works on a TV set. And as you will recognize, of course, the usage is different than to head-mounted displays, right? So we are working together with a lot of agencies, etc., that primarily focus on the head-mounted displays, but then see their own content on a TV set that is different in terms of usage, in terms of experience, and I think we can say that we are, all of us, still at the very early stage, learn a lot how content can be created, how incentives can be realized, so talking about business models, etc. And from a technical perspective, we can say there are a few technical challenges that are very hard. You know, certainly video streaming and the internet and broadcasting with more and more video quality is quite a challenge, and with VR it gets even much worse, right? So VR, if you have the complete sphere packed in one video stream, it's a huge video stream and requires a lot of bandwidth that is actually not really available today. So there are a few technical challenges, but I'm pretty confident that they're gonna be solved somehow in the near future, and so that's a technical stream we are working on. And beside this, of course, as already mentioned, actually use of 360Y. How can you integrate this in a TV broadcasting? Why do this? There are a lot of ideas, advertisement, of course, analytics, nice ideas, how to make use of this new medium. And some of the stuff we're going to show you also later in the VR launch.
Thanks a lot for mentioning the VR launch already 2 times, and I do it a 3rd time, because it's not just Fraunhofer with many interesting things up there. You can see actually many top of the line experiences coming from the binge.watch awards, and they're up there. Make use of it, you know. It's quite an experience, because that's what VR is all about. What we're trying to tackle for the next 30 minutes is, like, if we look at the whole ecosystem of television, we will try to talk a little bit about content production. What's the difference there? Where's the common base, and where are things like really diverging? We'll talk a little bit about how to get users and viewers into this kind of new environment, new technical environment. And finally, we talk a little bit about the value chain, the business model behind that. Because as I started, you know, it's like television is the most interesting part for many companies in television is, of course, that if you do it well, you can use it like a money printing engine, you know. If you don't do it well, you can sink a lot of money, but it's a different problem. And let's start actually with the content production. We already had a short round here with you, but maybe a quick one for you first, Michel, because you're coming from the traditional environment of television and movie productions. You did things like many Lars von Trier movies. Now you're into the development of interactive storytelling. First, actually, is there a common base between interactive storytelling and the linear storytelling we know from television and the movies, or is it like a completely different mindset we need to use there?
I feel very strongly that there is a definite common ground between storytelling in the sort of flat screen, within which the spectator is outside of the story, is a viewer disconnected from the world and using his or her imagination as the only link between him or her and the story. That's the traditional way of storytelling. And then shifting to interactive or VR, the system, the structure of telling the story remains the same, but with a huge difference. It that as a scriptwriter, as an experienced designer in interactive or VR, you need to include the viewer. The viewer becomes an essential part of the environment that you're describing. And depending on the level of interaction that you're going to include in the experience for the viewer, you need to decide who is that person who interacts. And that question of presence design in VR is absolutely key and something totally new that we haven't had to deal with before, which I find absolutely fascinating. So there are two levels when you talk about storytelling. There's a global storytelling level structure that is basically the thing, the hero journey, the transformation of characters, and the hills and valleys of the story, the dramaturgy of the story, that remains the same. But when you go down to the level of the actual view, and we don't know yet how it works. So I find it tremendously exciting, right in saying that VR, for one, requires the full attention and the full immersion of the viewer, and for that it's not going to compete with the way most people view TV. But what it's going to do is offer a very interesting and exciting opportunities for artists and creators and storytellers to involve their viewers in their story worlds. And just one last thing I wanted to say about this is that when you're talking about VR or interactive storytelling in relationship with TV, we should definitely mention, if we're looking at marketability and economic models, we should see that we are at the dawn of the age of VR. And you cannot compare the two yet, for one reason. One is because most people are equipped with television screens, while no one or hardly anyone is yet equipped with gear, with VR gears. This is going to take maybe between 2 to 5 years until a headgear becomes a commodity, something that everyone wants to have. But once that's done, the competition between interactive storytelling in VR and TV will be fierce. And my fear is that TV will become a sort of an aquarium. It will become something, like you said, you turn on to add light and sound to your apartment, and to act as a semblance of life to your apartment, while VR will be an experience you can actually immerse yourself into with a lot more depth, a little bit like movies are when you go watch a movie in the movie theater.
I mean, if you look at modern TV sets, Philips a couple of years brought a line of TV sets which is called Ambilight, which is actually something like a big screen TV set combined with a bedroom light or something like that. So it brings some nice colors around your screen to make the image more brilliant, but it goes more into this ambient kind of thing anyway. Maybe a question to everybody here. If we look at the approaches to interactive storytelling, one direction is coming from like traditional storytelling, where you essentially have a line which is predefined and takes the viewer by the hand, and the other direction would be something coming out of the gaming environment, where you look at, let's look at a game like Halo. You know, there is some storytelling happening there, but it's definitely not linear, and it's definitely not really compact. Is VR more towards the gaming environment, or is it more like trying to shape out stories in this new environment? What's your experience as a creator?
Well, it's defining the types of media. I mean, the types of media you can have on a flat screen. You've got temporal, interactive, and communicative. I mean, the internet's communicative, like Facebook's communicative. Games are interactive, and film and TV is temporal. So it's the same in virtual reality. You've got the same three kinds of media within it. So yeah, it's the same thing, but it's how much do you interact with it, and what's the purpose of it?
If you guys are coming from the traditional TV universe, if you guys are looking into VR, what's your approach there? I mean, one of the things you already explained is that, yeah, we can offer something like an depth or more a stronger experience around an existing property. But how do you shape that, or how do you shape it from a production point of view?
I mean, I saw, I think it was a study about how to use Facebook in the future, and if you put on your VR glasses and you have your timeline in a complete different way, where you can, you know, just sink into your Facebook timeline and choose from different, you know, things you can choose from, and then you imagine, you have there your traditional screen, and then you decide to watch something like in the old days, like 2D, and suddenly you sink into your story. And as Michel quite easily told us how to create a program for virtual reality. Just do it like normal, like traditional, and then make up your mind about how to integrate the viewer. So if that works, and Michel told us as well, I mean, it takes another 2 to 5 years until I have my own VR glass on my living room table. And if that's the case, then everyone kind of starts using everything like the individual person wants to. So our target is more, you know, create our stuff like we are good in, you know, like storytelling for a series or a TV movie or whatever. Take what Michel said, transfer it into the VR world in a way like you integrate the viewer. Integrate that in a world you're always using anyway. I mean, I'm pretty much Facebook addicted in a way, like I have to look into it and, you know, see what happens. And I'm communicating, and I'm you know, showing the world what I'm doing. So if that's just a part of it, why not? I think I can see TV transferring itself into a virtual reality kind of media.
I definitely like the Facebook idea, the Facebook comparison, because if you look at Facebook compared to like the traditional static websites, Facebook already acts like television, because there's a timeline of fairly ephemeral content, which when you're doing something, you're sitting at work or at the university or at home, and you're just like, oh, a little bit distraction, you open Facebook, you do something, you maybe watch something or read something, and then you're back again. So it's actually fairly close to the behavior you have with traditional television. And this might be one of the reasons, despite probably the real reason for Facebook going into Oculus is more like into the communication sphere and doing something different here. But the TV approach, I think it's already happening, or it looks like you would disagree.
But I think where it goes is it's about instantaneous communication, because you'll be able to speak with someone and teleport in front of them with virtual reality or with immersive technologies. And the reason why it's definitely going to go that way, because I mean, if you want to look at the money, the projections at the moment are virtual reality is like a $5 billion industry, and then by 2020 it's like 160 billion. That seems a lot, but it's like a growth of 150% each year. And we've got to think of how people are saying virtual reality at the moment is actually just marketing term. It doesn't really mean anything. And we've got VR, MR, and AR, which is actually the same thing. It's immersive technologies. You know, where does it stop? VR is like 100% of your vision taken up, and then if it's 99%, suddenly it's MR. You know, it's actually it's the same thing. And we're going to have a headset that just does the whole thing. The headsets next year, which by Intel and AMD, they're the chip manufacturers. That's when, you know, it's getting big now, because, like you were saying earlier, why would you need TVs if it's being projected onto your eye? We get rid of all of the screens. We get rid of, like, we won't need laptop screens. We won't need phone screens. This is why the chip manufacturers are getting into virtual reality now, because it's a waste of resources to have all of these screens. When, I mean, we've probably got a screen for each individual person here in their pocket. We've got a screen there, we've got a screen there. But we would only need to have sort of one each that just projects onto your eyes. Potentially, in the future, maybe just one that sits in the corner, finds all the eyes and projects to people's eyes from there. Like how Magic Leap works, but from distance.
I guess you guys at Fraunhofer are the closest to those kind of developments from everybody sitting here on the stage because you are probably having something already working in your office. You don't have any screens anymore. You sit in front of your empty desktop and just put on your glasses.
I mean, I like the scenario you just described, but I think this is still quite some time down the road, so I'm not sure. Let's see when that will be really. And then still, I mean, we have a lot of discussions and all the different, let's say, device types like TV screens and mobile devices, they all have their reason. And I'm not sure if I can agree to see the TV set basically as only ambient light or whatever ambient sound. I rather think television is for a quite big group of people.
And I think this relates to what the question is of what this talk is, which is virtual reality going to replace TV? But what that question really is that is immersive technologies going to replace passive shared content? And so, because that's the thing, isn't it? Because people are watching at the same time and it's passive. And it's temporally based, so you can get temporally based media inside virtual reality. You can kind of get passive stuff, but to have it shared, then it has to be networked, and so you have to have all the virtual reality headsets connected and networked. It's quite easy to do a networked virtual reality app. Like one person can do it these days. You don't need a team. You can actually have just one person build something like this. So you can meet inside a virtual space and actually like talk to each other. This is actually fairly simple to do. But then you'd have to be inside this virtual space together. But you could be anywhere in the world together, but then you could be in this shared space. So that's one way that it could be shared. You could watch Netflix with your friend who's in another country. But then essentially you're still watching Netflix, so it's still TV. Yeah. So it's just another way of experiencing it, potentially. That's why I'm focusing on social networking stuff. I think that's what VR really brings to the table in terms of...
So if we look at television, it's mostly like advertising driven. So one of those communication spaces, I just see ourselves meeting up in a room which is completely purple and there's a purple coat and somebody's hawking a little bit of chocolate when we're talking. Is this a possible scenario?
As much as I'd like to get away from advertising, because I mean it's based on how the economy of the world works at the moment, isn't it? So, I mean, the whole internet works on advertising right now. We get things for free because of advertising. It's great. But yeah, obviously it's kind of like a necessary evil that everyone knows has to exist right now. And it does get a little bit more scary because of how immersive these technologies are. Like, it's going to get quite intrusive, isn't it? Like, I think McDonald's brought out a virtual reality experience, and you're inside a beautiful field, and there's cows, and they're really happy, and it's all just magical, and this beautiful farm, and there's fresh potatoes coming out of the ground, and it's like, is this really what's going on? You know, it is getting even more manipulative. So yeah, I'm not really too sure how it gets monetized. I guess maybe you can work this out from coming from TV.
Yeah, I mean, actual brands like McDonald's and others are looking at brands on actual television, and then they think about how can they, combine themselves with the television brand and transfer themselves into a virtual reality. So that's what we are talking about at the moment. So how can we combine brands to kind of transfer them into virtual reality and give of course, an external experience out of the television set, but give them an experience where they can, find our brands. And this is something where they already think about. What we do at the moment is simply not thinking about how can we bring virtual reality on the normal screen in every household. Our ideas we are talking about is more related to, how can we combine a sponsor with our brand, and then have I hate the word, by the way, but anyway, a second screen kind of thing, within virtual reality. Because if you put on your glasses, the only screen, there's not a second screen, it's then your first screen. And that's why I was thinking about, having a world where you say, okay, I'm watching, I'm consuming content now. I put my glass on whatever content it is, I can find it in the virtual reality. I will be presented.
one of the things you found doing, or you are even responsible, is called inter-device and inter-service collaboration. Is this something? I found it on your website, so I hope it's true. And I just have the feeling this is probably something we're talking about here, like where you have like usually it's like inter-device. You would mean like you hop with the content from one device to the other, but no, you would hop from a different content paradigm to another, but sharing the same property.
Yeah, this is indeed a big topic. We have been working for quite some time. We call it second screen, and there's a companion screen and several standards. I'm still, well, technically the problem is more or less solved, and this is basically how the TV set or whatever the main screen is, could whatever mobile device as well, finds another second screen and how they can interact with each other. We actually have been realizing a scenario that is being broadcasted or being really used in the next months for one TV station which has a main screen still with a lot of sports content, and has a connected companion screen where you have the VR content on your mobile. And they do not believe so much in the glasses, but they believe in having an iPad pad-style device at home or mobile phone. And somehow the challenge was to get those devices synchronized, and you have the normal mainstream broadcast on the TV set. You can be just watch, and in addition you have the VR 360 experience on your mobile device, and you can just looking around. So for example, some kind of Formula One, it's not Formula One, but some kinds of sport. You can basically turn around, have a different view, etc. Can select view, different camera perspectives, etc. So this is another topic, how those devices are being related to each other, how they can be connected, and how media experience can be realized across multiple devices. It's heavily under discussion as well, right? So whether it's maybe too complicated for ordinary watchers at home, especially in TV, as I told earlier, lean back experience, want to sit back or just focus, not to play around with so many different devices. Needs to be very simple, very easy, but there's some expectations in scenario like that you can use your other devices for additional experience.
Unfortunately, our panel works a little bit like traditional television because there's a strict schedule, and I get a message that the commercials are coming up or something like that. No, I don't think so. But yes, we have to wrap it up. Thanks, Michel. He's not listening anymore, but thanks to you guys for the hopefully nice and informative time we could spend here, kind of early in the morning. If there are some questions from the audience, we have to take them probably there, because here will be some heavy movement right now with people running around, putting away laptops and everything. Thanks everybody. Thanks for coming by.
We are lunch?
Yes, exactly.
Discuss later there if you want.
Mm-hmm. We can probably try to do it together. Come up to the VR lounge, it's on the first floor. We get really, really great things to see, to watch what Fraunhofer is doing from their research, and you get many, many interesting experiences coming from the binge.watch awards. So if you want to see the state of VR, go up. It's totally easy.
At 12.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you.